Hey guys, got an interview today with Virginia Couch. Virginia is running for District 18. That is my House rep seat. We've finally got the Eddie Manis, Gina Oster situation handled and under control. If you guys remember last time, I was trying to coach Virginia about the proper answer to who she wants to run against, but it doesn't matter now. We've got it figured out. We'll talk a little bit about that, but I don't want to talk too much about it because it's old news. We've got about a little over a month until the actual election day. Early voting starts, I think, next week. We'll talk about that too. So we're going to catch up with Virginia Couch and see what's going on with her. So hello, Miss Virginia.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm not well. I'm well enough that I felt like I shouldn't have you in the house, and I don't want to sneeze on you or anything. You got a lot of stuff going on, and what you don't need right now is to get sick from me.
I do appreciate that.
I picked something up from the kiddo from school. I don't know. There's a weird one. I mean, just to throw some backstory, like he was sick early last weekend, and we kept him out a couple days. Took him to the doctor. The doctor's like, "Do you want to take a COVID test? Do I need to take a COVID test? Not me personally, but should I give him one?" And he's like, "Well, I don't know." I was like, "Well, as far as I could tell, he's had no contact, and I don't want to keep him out of school not knowing, but I also don't want to keep him out of school waiting on a test to come back. So no, I guess." So it's a weird, it's a weird, I don't know. It's a weird one, dealing with that. And so again, whatever, he's fine. He's back in school today. And so I'll just be snotty for probably 48 hours and then I'll go back to normal, which I'm really bummed about because I volunteered to be on the Board of Health thing, and I'm supposed to go in for that interview at the commission tonight. We'll see because I'm usually pretty good about kicking stuff pretty fast. So, I don't know, I'll take a mountain of drugs and see how I feel at about 3 this afternoon. If not, I'll email them and be like, I really want to do this, but I also don't want to go in there and get everybody sick because that would be rude right now, to say the least.
Nice and considerate.
Yeah, which is usually not me. I don't care. I'm the stubborn guy who just goes to work anyway. It doesn't matter. See? Anyway, so now that we have my current health history out of the way, so you actually have a candidate to directly go against now, and I've seen some stuff. One of the ones that I was looking at earlier today, I saw about a week ago, it went out. The Knox Dems Facebook page put out a comparison of you and Mr. Manis. And I mean, nothing on there seems out of place as far as how I understand things go. I do want to talk about the fully funded schools and school voucher conversation because the particulars of the voucher thing I think's ridiculous because it's just Memphis and Nashville is what Governor Lee's pushing, and I agree that that's stupid. If we're going to do it,
To start with,
right? If we're going to do it, it should be a universal statewide thing because that's what that House and governor is supposed to be dealing with, not particular portions. But so one of the things that's gotten to me recently, I'm trying to figure out how all this stuff works, especially for Knox County schools, at least curriculum and policy wise, the school board's the only one that does any of that kind of stuff. And so funding's really the only thing that would be on your plate as a representative.
correct.
So
It's whether you can redirect funding away from he's wanting to set up the education savings account to where the parent would get $7,000, which of course comes out of the public school funding, and they can use it for private school tuition.
And so the intent long term is to put that statewide. It's just a pilot that's in Memphis and Nashville.
Yes.
Okay. I go back and forth on how I personally feel about that. I get it on both sides. What bothers me about it, at least county wise, I guess the real question I have is, so that's $7,000. Is that what the state normally spends per student across the state?
That's approximately. It's a little bit more.
Okay, see, because that throws everything.
I think currently it's around $7,300. I think.
Because one of the things I had Virginia Babb in here, since I'm going to make it confusing on everybody and have multiple Virginias to talk about, I had Virginia Babb in here and we were talking about that, and the math to me says Knox County Schools spends about $10,000 a kid.
Correct.
And so what I'm confused on is the budget conversation inside the county, which I guess is outside of your purview per se, but if the state's putting up $7,300 or so of the $10,000 the county has per kid, that means we're only putting $3,000 in or so on the county tax level. And so again, this is one of those things that's super confusing me trying to follow the money around, because obviously a good chunk of it's coming out of property tax, but the real money's coming out of sales tax. Is that right?
and lottery funds and
Lottery funds is going to lower. I thought lottery funds was only for higher education.
maybe. I thought some of it was supposed to be going to K
Because I
through
would like
12.
it. That
I
was
don't know the answer to that.
I've had it that back when it kicked in. I was like, it's stupid, but I don't care that people want to do it. But if we're going to collect, if we're going to make it a taxable, if it's an income thing for the state, which I always thought it should go to lower education anyway. But again, my point being is that I've been trying to figure out how the money works in the school system, and I'm more confused now than I was before. That's part of my issue because I mean. One of the things in talking to a lot of different people, like especially the Virginia Bab conversation, she brought me a thing from one of their budget meetings, and like my kids are here at Rocky Hill, and I don't have it right in front of me, but I think it was my kids. Why are you starting a meeting again? Oh, I thought I was good at this. That was my phone telling me that this meeting is about to start, and it's like, well, no, it already started. Anyway, I'm not a pro on the tech side, sorry. But so my kids at Rocky Hill, I think the thing was like $5,400 is what Rocky Hill spends per kid. And so again, I'm just trying to track this whole thing down. This is a terrible tangent, and I apologize, but I'm trying to understand where the money comes from. And if the state is putting up 7,300, the average is 10, then is it coming out of sales tax collected in Knox County, goes to the state, and then comes back? Is that where the math's at?
Let me decline this call here.
See, we're all pros at this.
Sorry.
You're good. I did something too.
I thought I had that on Do Not Disturb so that, oh.
But anyway,
I'm doing that. I'm doing that right now. I'm sorry.
You're good.
That.
So we can, I'll get a call from somebody here again too, and it'll screw with something. But my point is like, I'm trying to follow the money for the school system. And and like I said, like one of the things I've learned in this process is that legislatively, other than budget, nobody does anything except the actual school system. So as far as, go ahead.
So most of the school is funded through the sales tax, the little bit of option tax, and then our property taxes.
Okay. And so, so I think what the conclusion I'm getting to as I'm working this out in my head is that, because I mean, again, as a business owner, I understand how when I collect sales tax from you, when you come into my place, I send that money to the state. And so the state's sending it back to me.
Yeah.
Or back to the county for the school system. Okay.
Correct.
Because again, like it's like, the county commission kind of stamps the school board budget here. And then again, it happens at state level too. I'm very confused on this one. I don't know if it's, obviously it's not something that you have experience with so far, but it's something that I would love to learn more about as you get further into this. And
I think the main concern is, they've got that formula that they use for how much goes to each school. And when you take a student out, that affects that formula. And yet the overhead for the school, the needs of the school, none of that ever changes, So all you're doing is affecting the amount of money they'll receive, but not changing the amount of money that they need.
Well, I mean, at some point they start losing teachers because they don't need as many teachers, and that takes a chunk of the budget back. Yeah. But I follow what you're saying.
But we don't even have enough private schools to make a dent in that. I mean, I think there's 6,200. I think is something in Knox County or in Tennessee that are in Knox County that are in private schools.
Right.
So it's a low number.
But I would think
the private schools.
I would think that would open the market to new entries, knowing that there's, excuse me,
which is a huge concern.
Right, knowing that there's more money available.
What other states have seen, Illinois, Michigan are two that have seen where, quote, private schools start opening up all over the place, and it's the same issue we had we have still with the federal funding for private schools and colleges is, how good are these schools? What kind of fly by night private schools open up and take this money and then close down 2 years later.
Right.
I mean, that's what they've been seeing in the other states.
Right.
But
I'd have to look more into that. I don't know personally a ton on that topic, but I guess to me, one of the things I like theoretically about the voucher system is that it gives it like, it's one of those rhetoric sales pitches. It's a school choice conversation, which I do kind of like that. But more than anything, I like the idea of it changes the accountability of the principal, because it puts their accountability directly to me as a parent instead of a long way around through the school board, through the county, through the state. Because you or my Kyle Ward, my county commissioner, or Virginia Babb, my school board, they have accountability to me as an elected official that I elected to put there. But as far as my principal, she doesn't have any need to ensure that I feel like I'm getting the correct education for my kid. And so being able to influence their decision making by my money, I think makes sense. I don't know if this makes sense as the correct answer long term, but the premise putting the market back in schooling makes sense to me. But I don't quite understand. Like, the math needs to make better sense, because, like, I mean, if I'm spending, I don't know. Anyway, I'm interested in it. I think it's something to be explored. I don't know if this one is the right one, so I'm not disagreeing with your opposition to it. I'm just trying to vocalize trying to understand, at least as I see it, where there can be benefits in the idea, and whether this one's correct in that or not is a question to explore.
yeah, for most people, it still doesn't open up a choice. If you look at the two biggest private schools in Knoxville, your $7,000, you're still going to have to come up with
Another 10 or
I
so.
mean, 13,000 in some cases.
Yeah, because
so,
I mean,
who's it a choice for?
Right. As I was looking through it, as we were going through the summer and was trying to figure out what's happening with school, I looked just out of curiosity, and I think Sacred Heart over here for elementary was like 17 a kid.
Yeah.
So I'd still be paying 10 out of pocket. And yeah, on the other side of it too, and again, and the other side of it too, that is obvious, is that you have all the people that are doing private school anyway, and all they're doing is getting a $7,300 discount.
And that's what the other states have seen is over time, over a 3 to 5 year period, what happens is those children that the program was meant to, what they've advertised it for,
right,
is helping the kids who are in poorly performing school go to a better school. And then all of a sudden what they see is the money, 60, 70, 80% of the vouchers then in turn end up going to the kids who are already in those schools.
Right. I mean, that makes sense as the logical progression through something like this, because yeah, I could see it as not because if you can't afford to send your kids to public school because of the small fees, how are you going to afford the extra whatever? I mean, that makes total sense. But again, I would again, following the money thing, it's very interesting to me, because again, like, just on a farce, we were talking about it, and it's like, Knox County, it theoretically averages 10 a kid. My school is way less than that. But if we go on that 10 grand a kid, I got COVID classrooms are 18 to 20, which is way down from normal years, because they're usually in the 25 to 30 range in elementary school. It's like, give me 20 10-year-olds, and then give me $200,000, and then give me a list of things they need to know in 12 months. I can make that work. I'm pretty sure I could figure that out on my own. With that kind of money, I could hire 2 teachers, pay them 65, 70 grand a year, and still make 60 grand on the other side. Obviously there'll be other fees and stuff inside it, but just lazy, quick running through it, to me, and I don't necessarily see the value for the money spent. And that's part of the problem for me, and why I think me and among other people are interested in the idea of a voucher system. I feel like the school system's a little bit bloated, and it costs more than it should to do okay. Like, if it's going to cost this much, it should do better, in my opinion. And
then that's what we should work on. We should work on the underperforming schools, and how, if they need more funding, or if it's a matter of where we're spending the money, maybe we're spending the money on the wrong schools.
Right. But then this again falls into my problem, is that I mean, I guess you could play little games as far as releasing budget in certain ways so that they have to use it in certain ways. But for the most part, that's out of your purview. It's the school board's
No, it's
the school board's game, because like the joke that somebody said to me was like, the school board can present their budget, commission says okay, and then they change everything that they were put on their budget the day after, and we can't do anything about it. Which again,
right.
like I get the premise. I like the idea that the school board's kind of independent. They don't have to deal with the political whims of a
Right.
county commissioner or a mayor trying to change their mind on how they want to do things, or trying to influence what's going on in the schools to use it for political
I
purposes
agree.
down the road. I think that's a good quality to have it, but at the
I
same
do.
time, I need to understand how we're spending this much money and getting. I don't know where we sit nationally, but we're not on the top half in school systems,
No, we're not.
and if we're spending this much money and we can't, I don't know. My concern is, if I feel like the answer is let's spend more money, and it's like, I don't know. We can do better with what we have. So let's push off this, because I guess again it's not outside of this budgetary
And
conversation.
I think not just against the private voucher, but I also think, and you can see this on my website, it's not just about spending money on public schools. It's about helping the children that need the help to do better in the underperforming schools.
Right.
I talk about it, and I talk about the teachers I've talked with. It's their biggest concern is how to address the issues outside of school,
Right.
where they have children that are hungry, or they have children that can't focus because of whatever is going on economically with their parents.
Right.
No matter how much you spend, you can't help those 3, 5, 10, 20 kids in your classroom if they're coming in with all that baggage.
Right. Right. And that's a
So
huge. Right.
it's getting those,
Yeah, that's a huge. That's what the
it's
huge
getting
social.
those children.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I get that. It's just I don't that one. Excuse me again. That one is a larger social conversation that
Mhm.
that needs to be had, and I don't, and that's another one I don't know the answers to. So I guess the question would be, if that's the direction we're following here, um, what are some things we can do about that? Like I know pre-K is something that a number of candidates have talked about, and opening up pre-K throughout the state at a very
Yep.
reduced rate or free for families that need it. Um, but I mean, like you said, one of the things is it's like these kids are, third, fourth, fifth graders, whatever, and they ride the bus home to an empty house, and they may see a parent
Yep.
before they go to bed, and thankfully or hopefully the parent at least gets them up and out the door and on the bus in the morning. But between leaving school and coming back from school, there's nothing there. Um, and so I don't like that one to me. What do we do? How do we address that issue?
We've got to address economic issues. For most of them, the reason that they're experiencing that is the economic conditions in their household.
Okay. So,
And you also, you have a lot of single family or single parent households that need some assistance.
right. So one of the, I mean, this that kind of moves us on to the next one on the list that I have for you is the raising the minimum wage, because that would definitely impact that, because you've got a single parent that's working two jobs at minimum wage is barely enough to pay the bills. That's what they have to do to keep anything in the household for the kid, and then get them to school. What's your target number for minimum wage?
9 to 10
9 to
in
10.
Tennessee, in Knoxville. I'm for setting a state minimum wage, of course, because we don't have one, of say $9, and let the other counties, cities decide what their minimum wages are, which right now they can't do.
What do you mean? So right now what is it? There is no state minimum wage currently. It's just we just follow
Correct.
we
It's
just
just
follow the
federal,
federal one. Um,
which is 725.
because to me, it's as I look at it, I think about it a lot. One of the things I've been really thinking about a lot is, as far as the kids in school go, is like, what are we preparing the kids to do for work? And so regardless of what minimum wage is, what's the job? Because one of the issues I have with minimum wage conversation is that there are jobs that aren't worth it, that they're just not worth it. And so the question as a owner or a manager is either I don't create the job so nobody can make any money, and or I create the job and it ends up killing my company or something like that over time, because whatever the thing is just not worth $10 an hour to do. Um, there are jobs like that out there. Or if you do pay the $10 an hour, the product cost goes up, and the product cost going up makes it you're not selling it. That kind of stuff. There's I get the idea of wanting to pay more, and for the most part, I agree that most people should probably pay more than they are paying. But I do feel like there's jobs out there that just can't functionally work on a significantly higher minimum wage. And so what happens when we lose jobs for it? Because to me, one of the things going on looking into the future is this automation thing. Like, I was very interested in Andrew Yang's kind of pitch when he was running for president about the guaranteed basic income.
2000. Yep.
Right. And it's a very interesting premise because, like, I kind of on a whim, I invested a couple $100, nothing major, in a robot company that makes burger flippers. I mean, that's what they do. They literally, this thing sits over a grill just like a McDonald's kid would, flips burgers, and then puts them in the tray, and then an actual person assembles the burger. But the actual grill job, for, insurance sake, it's not going to get burnt because it's a robot, not a person, and that robot can sit there and flip for hours and hours and hours with no break and all the other different stuff. And so I think that's an eventuality. And to me, with a significant raise in minimum wage, that will accelerate the innovation in that field, so that more things are going to get automated out faster as we raise the minimum wage.
And we've seen automation over 80 years. On factory lines, I used to work in a factory. A lot of those jobs became automated. They've been talking about it. I used to work at Kentucky Fried Chicken when I was a teenager. They've talked about the fast food type businesses going automation. But I see that maybe in the checkout. We've seen it with COVID-19, how easy it is now. You drive up, scan your card, and go on without a lot of interaction. But, what we can do is better train our people to where they're not doing those type of jobs.
Right.
We have trade schools. The resources are there. We already have programs out there. We have needs.
Right. There is that stigma that got attached to being a carpenter somehow.
A trade school person.
Right.
Oh yeah. Somehow if you were an auto mechanic, and I used to do accounting work for a auto repair shop here in town, and they were paying them $30, $40, $50 an hour, but nobody wanted to be an auto mechanic. And you're like, come on.
Right.
But it's the society
right.
looking at somebody who has dirt under their fingernails.
Right, because I agree. I think that's one of those that is a future job. I think, like mechanics, plumbers, HVAC, that kind of stuff. Because I mean, you can automate parts and pieces of it. Like the equipment itself might be built by a robot, but actual installation, a robot can't come to my house and stick an AC unit on the side of my house. It's just not. I don't see that in.
And there's a huge need for them right now. Try to get AC replaced, this past July when it was really hot.
Right.
They were 2-3 weeks backed up because they didn't have technicians.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that to me is one of the interesting things to look at as far as education or even the minimum wage conversation, is what the jobs of the future are. And I still don't know. Like, I still think, there's a line where there's hopefully the stigma goes away and we get more people into the trades. But at some point I don't think there's enough jobs in the trades long term to offset the number of people that are going to be looking for jobs, period. And so I don't know, outside of creative jobs, I don't know what's going to be left for the most part in 10, 15 years as my kids are graduating high school and looking to, do I go to college or do I go to a trade school? Or, we can't all be social media influencers, which is all they want to be right now anyway. They want to be pro gamers and stuff like that. But, I don't, that to me is very, it's very concerning as a parent. I mean, even as an adult, as a person myself, it's like, what is my job in 10 years going to be? What am I going to continue doing? How am I going to save enough for retirement doing whatever it is I do? Because parts and pieces of my job are getting pulled apart too, as we're watching things right now. I've been lucky enough, air quotes, lucky enough to be essential through this whole thing. I haven't stopped working. I would have made more not working, but whatever, that's life. I got to deal with it.
Well, I work in the financial industry, and they face that every day. Talks about, do you need investment advisors? Can everything be automated? Can you just go online and do online investing? So it's up to the industries, the employers in the industries, the companies and the innovators to come up with what we're going to be doing 15 years from now. And, as fast as we change in America, it'd be 5 years from now.
You're right.
But, there'll be jobs. They just may not be the type of jobs, look at the medical field. Look at what doctors do now compared to what they used to do
right.
20, 25 years ago.
Right. So again, you
they're
accidentally,
sadly enough, becoming assembly line workers, just
right.
in a different way.
Right. And you seamlessly transition us to the next topic is the Medicaid for all thing, which is on your thing. And that one, I don't have any pushback on that. If it's there and it's available and we're basically not taking money that is available to us, it doesn't make sense to me. I can't figure out the argument.
And the argument against it is there's a small percent, 5 to 10%, that the feds do not pay, and the concern that, of course, the federal, depending on where they go from here, can cancel that program at any time.
So
I've been around long enough. We've done that with Medicaid. We expanded it to uninsured 20 years ago. And I know some people that were on it at the time because they could not find affordable private insurance, and they paid to be part of that program. And then TennCare canceled it.
Right.
I even think they had it 2 or 3 years before they canceled it.
Right. Because one of the things to me that I don't get, and there may be something legislative, state or federally, that kind of gets in the way, or it may just be greasy insurance companies doing what greasy insurance companies do, is I don't understand. I don't like the attachment to the job. I think that's a terrible practice.
Can't stand it.
But I also, I'm not particularly comfortable with the idea of the government running it either. Because the question, I guess, is if the government's going to run it as a healthcare, that scares the crap out of me. If a government runs it as an insurance, it's going to be, it'll be wasteful money-wise. Because, I've got friends that are vets and they go through the VA, and it's like, if you want an example of the government doing what the government does, go sit in the VA and talk to those guys in the waiting room for a while, and they'll tell you how efficient and easy it is to be in that system. And so I just don't understand why a private insurance company doesn't offer reasonable rates to just private persons, because I would much prefer to pay for my insurance maybe a little bit more for the same insurance out of pocket to have my insurance that has nothing to do with my employee or my employer. So that
and for me, I had always been on private insurance since I bought my business in around 2009 because my employer didn't offer group insurance.
Right.
And for some people, it's affordable, but if you're female, childbearing age, it's not affordable.
Right.
Or they exclude all kinds of stuff.
Right.
If you're over 50, or if you're a male 45 or older, it's not affordable. And the insurance companies, they are private, for-profit companies. They are not going to do anything that's going to hurt their profit that they don't have to do.
See, but that again is the issue. Is that I fully get that premise, and as a I guess a capitalist more than anything, how is it that we as the customer aren't holding them accountable to that? That's my issue with it. It's like, I get it, but
because right now they have enough customers through the way we have set up our system is employers. This is a benefit, a quote benefit. This is how they, encourage people to come to work for them. Here, we're going to provide you health insurance, and they can't not do it now because they're trapped. Right. Because employees expect it, and the people reaping the benefit are the insurance companies.
Well, that in and of itself is the issue. Is that not only are people expecting it, it's now required by law if you're a certain size company to provide it. And again, it's like this is why I make the greasy part of the joke. Is like, I feel like there was intent there in that is that the insurance companies are insuring themselves against anything to make sure that they can do what they do, and we as individuals and then we as elected persons are allowing it to happen. And I think that's one of the things that it's like, because you said we in there a couple of times, I'm like, which we are we talking about? Are you talking about we as Tennesseans or Americans, or are you talking about we as in the House for you particularly? Is that because to me, I feel like there's somebody that's a better researcher than me that could do the work for me. It'd be beautiful if you're out there, do it for me, and I'll publish it for you. Is to me, I feel like there's a very specific set of rules and standards that we as a state or federal government or combination of the two have put in place to protect the insurance companies from us, the individual, and to force that customer base thing, and it's like, it's the same thing with like some of the free tuition, the student loan stuff is like the first thing that happens, when
tuition goes sky high.
Right, when there's requirements and that's the same thing that I think we're going to see. It's not that tuition goes sky high or the premiums go sky high. It's the cost of the service is going to go sky high.
Well, we've already seen that in some situations with private insurance, though, because we the employee have no idea what our insurance is costing us.
Right.
And we're paying whatever the premiums are because of course the employer is not paying us as much as they would if they weren't having to pay these insurance premiums. And then we go to the doctor, we have no idea what it just cost.
Right. Right. Exactly. Because like I went and got my elbow looked at on Friday. And she sends me with a script of this and a script for PT and like, I don't know, a couple x-rays and 20 minutes I spent in the place.
Yeah.
I don't know how much I'm getting billed for that. I mean, I paid $60, I think is my copay or whatever, but I don't know how much that costs because that's one of the things I try to have a conversation with. And again, this is a research project. It's like realistically, let's forget the labor part of the cost altogether. Like, okay, you have a 100-room hospital that you spent X number of $1 million to build. It has all these different facilities, your KUB bill, all this stuff. Let's figure it out. What's the math? How much does it cost? How much is the room cost per day or per hour? Whatever the number is, however you want to break it down. Because that's how I do stuff in our business. I do a per day on everything. I know what my KUB is on average per day. I know what my rent is per day. I know what this is per day. And once you add all those up, and I include labor, once I add all those up, I have to sell this much to break even. So the cost of product goes against the last number, but you take that whole thing and that's my break-even number. That's my everybody's getting paid. I'm not losing money in the business, but I'm not making anything either. And that's the bottom line because I do have a day job, so I don't need to make money from it. But the intent is to retire by 40. But, but so like I can't wrap my mind around that. I wholly understand that you have a Fort Sanders or UT that's a multi-million, if not in the billion-dollar range facility. And then all the equipment in there and the high dollar or whatever. And then you have really well paid staff because they're saving lives. It's important. But I can't figure out the math. Like I can't, I was talking about school math.
They don't have to figure out the math.
Right.
That's the problem with our system right now is you look at the hospitals around town that have grown so much over the last 20, 30 years that I've been in Knoxville. They're double and triple. They're so fancy inside. Why? They have a steady stream of income.
Right, because that to me is what like a lot of the politicians especially have been talking about how we're losing all our rural hospitals. It's like how are these hospitals not making money? There's people there. There's people that use them. It's how are they not like?
A lot of them are going to the fancy private hospitals. That's the problem.
But even so, like if you're out in Roane County, you're not driving all the way to Knoxville unless it's something, an emergency, emergent care or an urgent care center, I feel like would do just fine. There's plenty of people falling off their bikes. One of our friends' kids broke his arm the other day.
And that's one of the ways we can get some control of our healthcare system. Our healthcare costs is me. Luckily, I've been very healthy all my life. I do occasionally get a kidney stone. All I need for that kidney stone is some pain meds to allow me to pass that.
Right.
Because you can't pass it without some pain meds. But the only place you can get that from is the emergency room.
Right.
And they'll hook you up to an IV. They'll make you do a CAT scan. It's $8,000 plus one time it was $13,000.
Right.
Go in there. I'm not even there 2 hours.
Right.
And it's $8,000+.
Right.
Where all I need is to run to an urgent care center, have some kind of screening process to make sure I'm not a drug addict, give me some IV or whatever, and watch me for an hour, make sure I can pass it, and let me go home.
Right. Right.
But our system is not set up like that.
Okay. So but how do we like what do we break in this? Like what do we need to be breaking in the system to get it back to that? Because I agree. I think it should.
We need
I think I should know. Like I think it should be like a menu board at McDonald's. I should walk into the urgent care center and look up at the menu board and go broken arm, $700.
You can't do that if you have insurance because they'll say, oh, well, what insurance do you have? Because it depends on what the insurance company is going to pay me.
Right. Because I mean, because that's one of my issues too. Is we were trying
what's the answer? We need a schedule of costs.
Right. Well, because
this is what insurance companies are going to pay for these services.
Right. And I mean, because it's weird. Because it's weird to me that the customer, the middleman, but the customer theoretically is making the price here, but it's not me, the user of the product. It's the customer, being the insurance company. They're the ones setting what they're willing to pay.
Yep.
And that's crazy to me because I feel like that is, like I was trying a couple of years ago. I changed insurance companies. No, that's the wrong story. We had a weird spot and we missed my youngest annual, his annual physical or whatever.
Hang on, there we go.
And so I called and scheduled it when we had the time or whatever and got it done. But it's traditionally at his birthday. But so his birthday is actually Sunday. But it ended up being like December when we took the appointment eventually. And it's like, well, I'd like to go back to doing it on his birthday. It's easy to remember that we do his annual right near his birthday. They're like, well, that's within a year. We can't do that. It's like, what? And they're like, well, we can't do that. It's a flag for insurance fraud. It's like, no, I just want to go back to a schedule that makes sense to me and my family. And they're like, yeah, well, you could pay you could pay it out of pocket, and then the following year we could go back to on the birthday, but to make that adjustment one. And I was like, okay, fine. And then like they came back and told me I couldn't do that either. It was really weird. Like just because I wanted to move a schedule around to a more logical time, the insurance company basically said no. And it's like, it wasn't an emergent thing, so it wasn't that big a deal that the insurance company said no. It's not like he's going to get sick because he does his annual at a different time. It's just weird. It just doesn't, like, how does the insurance company, you provide the service, doctor. I need the service. Do the service and let me go on my way.
And the insurance companies, I mean, we hear the stories all the time. The insurance companies too, and the hospitals they're not connected. If I go to the ER, I'm paying for the hospital,
right?
And then I'm having to pay a doctor that's not hired. I mean, they're just an independent contractor, right, that's going to bill me separately. And then the anesthesiologist is somebody else, and the x-ray person's someone else.
Right. I read a story recently.
I don't even know what I'm going to pay. My insurance company doesn't even know what I'm going to pay.
Right. I read a story. It was a couple of years ago or whatever. It was a nurse who worked in a hospital. And so she was aware of like the weirdness that you're talking about. And I can't remember it was an emergent issue, but she drove to a different hospital the further from her house because that was in network. But then she ended up having to pay out of pocket. She had to pay out of pocket anyway because the doctor that saw her in this other place was not in network, even though the hospital was. And so
she had no way to know when she got there.
Right, but she's in the field. Like this is like she intentionally skipped the closest hospital to try to avoid this issue, and still runs into this issue.
So again, if you go online, say I have a kidney stone, I'm supposed to go on the internet, figure out which local hospital is in my network, and then still go there and say, okay, by the way, I have Blue Cross Blue Shield level whatever.
Right.
Can I make sure that whatever doctor you're going to let me see is covered by that policy?
Right.
I mean, that's insane.
It doesn't make sense.
We don't have.
Right. Like I think I've been debating on it. One of the economist guys that I listen to and read on a lot, his thing is like carry catastrophic only. Pay for your own physicals, pay for your own everything else. Just carry catastrophic. It's way cheaper, and until something like like major car accident, something like that, but regular little stuff, you just pay out of pocket. Go to an urgent care center and pay out of pocket. And then the more I think about it, the more I think that's the right move when I retire, because then I lose my insurance from my employer. Because my company does a pretty good job for me. My wife costs a ton of money, but as the employee, I get it pretty cheap. So I'm not, but it's pretty crappy coverage. So to move.
Well, that's for me. I mean, even though I'm under a health exchange policy, I've got a very, very high deductible for that very reason, because for me to carry really what people would consider, quote, good coverage, where they pay for everything, would be $1,200 a month.
Yeah. It's more than,
and I'm a healthy
it's more
person,
than a mortgage.
so
Right.
I do what you're saying. I take the risk. I pay for a much cheaper policy that is more catastrophic coverage. And, if something comes up, I pay it myself.
Yeah. And that's which I don't know. Like, but again, we've had this whole conversation about it. What is your job upon election? What can we do about it? Like, what is
Well, I still think we do need to expand Medicaid so we can get more money back into our system. And this would have saved some of these hospitals because they don't get paid if the patients don't go there.
Right.
And the patients don't go there because they don't have insurance.
Right.
So, we need to absorb that 5 or 10% that we would lose and go on and get our people healthy.
Right.
And then we need to invest in health.
I agree.
We need people eating better. We need people out. COVID-19, if there's one good thing about it, is I've seen people outside more than I've seen in Knoxville in
there's like
20 years.
There's like 20 people that have been walking their dog and stuff, and they're like, "Who are you? How long have you lived here?" And it's weird because it's like my dog. You've met my dog. He's crazy, and he's very vocal about dogs that come near our house. And so it's been a headache for us because he's a lot more vocal, a lot more often, because a lot more dogs are walking by that I didn't know ever existed. And it's crazy.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the things too, is like we've all sat through and listened to all the like I said, I'm trying to get on this Board of Health thing because I want to be a part of this. I want to help understand it. And to me, I want to help make sure they're explaining things better. That's kind of my pitch. If I am feeling up to actually physically going there, I think I'm going to email them and just kind of tell them about what's going on, because I do.
It's really nice if we have an informed citizen. Well,
I just think
that's what we want.
I think one of the problems they have is that they're doctors, except for Glenn. They're doctors and they talk like doctors.
Yeah.
And most of us out here in the normal world don't really understand that language. It's almost French, but not quite. I guess it's closer to Latin. But anyway, so one of the things to be is if I'm chosen to take this, it's to be like, explain this to me, explain why you're doing what you're doing and what you're doing. And if I don't understand it, then you need to start over. Because I'm not stupid, but I'm not super bright either. I'm not a doctor. I don't understand the language. If you can't explain it,
you're like the rest of us. We're average, not civilians.
Right. Explain it to me so that I can understand it. Because if I can't understand it directly, talking to you, being able to ask questions, then there's no way the 500,000 of us out here in Knoxville are going to understand it, except for the probably 50,000 doctors and nurses that we have in town. But you get what I'm saying, And so if you can't get it across clearly and understandably, that we as a citizenry understand it and then want to get on board with it. Because if it just seems like, because I think one of the problems is that it's visually looks like it's just this random group of people throwing stuff out there. Like, I understand the history, I understand why they exist, and I go back and forth on whether I agree with their existence or not. But there is need, but there's need to make us understand, to help us understand. And again, one of the issues too, and for me, if I get on there, I'm going to use that as all sorts of content for this, because I think the media fails to tell the story clearly either. So it could not be, it could be the Board of Health is doing just fine explaining it, is that the media is turning around and not explaining it well either.
Right. And I think for the Board of Health, the problem is they're used to doing their job in kind of a vacuum.
Right.
They're not used to having to go out and talk every single day about numbers and stuff. They're used to doing their job, making their recommendations, and it being followed.
Right, and they used to meet like once every quarter, instead of once a week, and then it was televised, but nobody watched it, and now it's televised and a few people watch it. But I think one of the other things too, as far as the pandemic goes in the long term, is all we've talked about is masks and different potential therapeutics that they're coming through with and vaccines and stuff like that, and nobody's talking about base health that seems to have a real correlation to who has more effects from it. There's plenty of people that get it and nothing happens.
Right.
They have a couple days, they may not feel good, they may not smell and taste for a day or two, and then a couple weeks later things kind of go back to normal. There are long-term questions on whether or not, if you've had it, there's long-term cardiovascular issues. There has been discussion of that, but there's base health, like Dr. Rhonda Patrick was a guest on one of my podcasts that I listened to. And she was talking about, it seems to be a strong correlative with vitamin D deficiency, which apparently 90-something% of Americans are vitamin D deficient. And outside of this podcast, which is not my podcast, but that's Joe Rogan, I'm a big fan of his show. Outside of that podcast, you don't hear anybody talking about it. and he's a huge podcast, so there's a lot of people that have heard it through his show. But as far as coming from the CDC or the FDA or Dr. Fauci and them, they're just talking about how to deal with it in front of you, instead of being like, hey, we need to get healthier, because then if you do end up getting it, you're going to have less effect from it. And then there is the greater, like you're saying, like the real long term, we are an unhealthy set of people. We just are. And for whatever reason, there's no incentive. There doesn't seem to be any incentive publicly and socially to do anything about it. And
that's, people assume that when we talk about just, expanding Medicaid, you're doing it to people who aren't taking care of themselves, but that's not necessarily true. It can be people who are in jobs that they're just not making enough to be able to afford insurance, but they're eating right. They're healthy, but that doesn't prevent you from having a car accident or having a motorcycle accident or having a kidney stone.
Right.
You need insurance for those emergencies.
Right. Yeah. And so, again, I don't know. It seems to me that there's so much social parts of things which government can't do. Government can't encourage, but government can't do. And that's what's concerning to me about a lot of the conversations we have inside government, because a lot of the major talking points are things that aren't kind of out of the purview. And it's like, okay, I appreciate that a person running for an office is down with a thing, but what do we do? What can we do? And I guess maybe what should we do legislatively about issues like this?
Well, and on health, it's spending money on programs that get people healthy, get them outside. We do a good job, I think, in Knoxville, or a better job improving our parks and walk areas and stuff. But we need to think about food. How hard is it to go out and buy healthy food? We subsidize, and I'm a meat eater, so don't think I'm not, but we subsidize meat to a very high level. Right. And you can go down to Kroger right now and buy a pound of hamburger for $3. Right. And yet you can't buy a bag of apples.
Now, Claire, point of subsidize on like a WIC or a food stamp program, or subsidize directly to meat production through the state? Farmers. And that's through the state or federally, or both?
State and federal.
Okay. Because that's always a question to be like the whole dormant years that they pay and stuff like that, where like they're and again that goes to me, it's like there's this is just as much economics as it is health conversation, is that the government's hand in trying to push economics on issues like this tends to be long term more detrimental. It's like, okay, hey, I'll pay you this year to not grow any corn, because we want to keep the price of corn up a little higher so that the people that are growing corn can make enough money. But if you grow corn too, right, if you growing corn too, then everybody's going to have to sell it under quote market, and nobody's going to make any money, and we'll lose all the farms. It's like, okay, that on the surface that makes sense, but who's it really protecting long term? Because at some point, the reality is if every farm is trying to grow corn, they're all going to fail, or at least most of them are going to fail. Right. So.
And we don't need that much corn anyway.
Right. So why? But to me, it's like, why would we pay you to not grow corn instead of being like, hey, just a heads up, you're going to fail if you grow corn. Not that you're not the best corn grower in town, but if you can't do something to make your corn better or different, you're not going to sell it. There's not enough. There's too much corn and not enough people. So grow something different. Which again, I'm not okay with the government saying that specifically either, but I'd prefer that to them paying to not grow. It doesn't make sense. Exactly. Because there's other stuff you could do. You could grow other products. You could go into maybe a meat or a livestock kind of situation. I don't know. It's just that kind of stuff's weird to me when the government gets involved in it. I feel like the base concept's like, okay, that makes sense. But then as you watch it long term, it doesn't. It ends up costing more money to everybody. I have to pay more for my corn directly, and then I have to pay more in taxes to pay the guy that's not growing corn, and it doesn't do me any good as the citizen, and that should be the intent, at least in my understanding. So we've rambled. You gave me a half hour at 45. Is there anything specific you've got right now that I'll ask a question about, and then we'll call it a day?
No, I appreciate. I love chatting with you.
Well, I appreciate that.
Enjoy listening to the other ones that you're doing. I think you are doing what we need. I don't care how people vote, if they will just be informed when they vote. That's all I ask them for.
That is,
vote on the issues. Stop voting on personalities.
right.
If you believe in the issues, vote.
And I think
vote on your issues.
And I think it is our due diligence as voters to figure out what your jobs actually are. Because I think there's a big issue. Because, I mean, we spent the first chunk of this show trying to figure out school funding, and I'm still fairly unclear about exactly how that goes down. But, like I get, like, like I've seen plenty of politicians for different seats running on a platform of whatever, and then as I'm understanding what's going on, that has nothing to do with the job they're going to take. Like my running joke here, and I use Gina, but it's not, this isn't her thing, but like just the hypothetical, if Gina Oster was running on a Build the Wall campaign, people would respond to that. People that are Trumpers would respond to that and be like, yes, Trump needs help building the wall. That's not her job. That's not her job. And it couldn't be her job if she wanted to be her job. And again, I'm not saying Gina has not done this. I'm just putting that premise out there. And I think there's a lot of and it may not even be intentional on the campaign, that the campaign's not doing it intentionally, thinking that they're pulling one over on us. But I think there's a lot of politicians that talk about a lot of stuff that's outside of the job they're seeking.
And it's because people run these crazy polls about what makes people vote, and it's emotions, not common sense and information.
Right.
And I'm trying to run on the fact that what will make a difference is your next House representative is going to vote and have an impact on whether or not private vouchers move forward.
Right.
Of course, after the court makes their decisions, your representative's going to have a say in whether that comes to Knoxville. Your representative's going to have a say in women's reproductive rights. Your representative's going to have a say in how the public schools are funded, how much it's funded, how much is allocated. I mean, it's just a fact. Those people sit out there in Nashville and they make these decisions that impact you every day, sometimes more than some of the federal decisions.
Right. Yeah, and I think for the most part more than, because we were talking about this on the big show. We had our good lawyer friend, and he's a civil rights attorney. He deals with civil rights stuff all the time, and we were talking about the new Supreme Court justice nominee, and one of the things that especially federally tends to be a single issue for a lot of voters is abortion rights. That tends to be one of the big single issues for people. And like our conclusion, not that he's necessarily the super expert, but he's way more expert than I am, is that federally speaking, I don't believe that there's any possibility without a complete stop, tear apart the Constitution, and start over. I don't think federally speaking there's any way federal law is going to change significantly on abortion rights. State laws can, but I don't think the federal government's going to change anything hugely long term, because there's too much precedence. There's too many years of case law in place to dismantle, that one or two justices isn't going to be able to pull that off in any short term. And as the pendulum swings, it'll swing back, and a new justice will come on, and things will stay in place. I maybe this is rhetoric on my end, but I don't think federally we're going to have a huge shift in that. I think state-wise we can play. I think state-wise there's things that can change, and what the state's willing to allow inside the state. And I think it should be that way, in the sense that the state should have the right to make some of those more specific decisions for their locality. And so, yes, I agree that reproductive rights are in your purview. I just don't like talking about it federally anymore. I think that one specifically in federal issues is just an emotion vote swing. That's just screaming for.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's out of purview. And again, that's, like I said, I'm learning more of what actually of trying to suss out what's the actual rhetoric versus reality, because I think too many people, like you were saying, know what gets people excited and gets people hot and bothered. Because I mean, like right now we got all this stuff about Trump's taxes. And it's like, whatever. It's not going to change anything. It's really not. I don't think there's any swing voters out there that really care that much about it. And so I'm curious if it's going to be if they're calling that the October surprise or not, because it's not a very good one if it is. So,
No, I hope that's not it.
so I don't know. I just like I get lost in. It's so frustrating. Again, I go off on voters. Like I'm mad at voters. Like I don't want term limits. I want people to get out and be active and learn what they're supposed to do. And then another one too is I want media to do the job, to do their job. When again, throwing my silly hypothetical out there, if Gina was out there running on a build the wall campaign, it should have been the first question out of that interviewer's mouth when she says that aloud. It's like, how do you do that? That's not your job. How are you possible to do that? And that it should be very clear that it's rhetoric, because there is a lot of stuff that's just flat rhetoric that nobody actually says that they mean. They just say it because they know it gets that reaction.
But I tell you, all you have to do is talk to as many voters as we have over the last few months, and the national race is driving a lot of discussion.
I think so too. I was looking at your post that I was taking notes off your post about the comparison of you and Eddie Manis, and I was reading some of the comments, and it was like I can't remember. Somebody basically said that I hope this presidential campaign runs down ticket. Because they've and I'm curious about I am curious about it around that. Matt Shears was in here and we talked about that a lot, and that like for Democrats in Knoxville, Trump is the best tool he has to do anything to get Democrats active in Knoxville. Yep. And so his hope is, because again, I don't know, that's the other thing too, and it's an election commission thing. I don't understand. I feel like we should separate those kind of things. Like I don't think I think federal elections should be on their own. I think state and local elections should be on their own. They shouldn't all run together, because I feel like when they run,
it would be nice, because I mean you could actually talk about totally different issues.
Right, because I think I think the reality is there is that you have, again, our lawyer friend that was talking Supreme Court stuff with us. He hates Trump, like vocally hates Trump, and he loves to hate on Trump, and we'll go on and on about it. And so he's going to go down ballot just hating Trump and all Republicans because he hates Trump so much. And it's like, well, I'm not going to, I'm not saying you or Eddie's a better candidate or whatever, but I'm also not going to pick you just because you've got a D and Trump that I don't like has an R.
I've had multiple conversations with people who their first question is, do you support Trump? And I'm like, that really, I want you to think about, what do you need from your representative right now? Well,
and again, like we were saying earlier, you can't, at least as the job goes, you don't support Trump anyway, even if you want to. And that, again, that's my point. That's the problem, is that people that your answer would make a difference. And it's like, no, that answer doesn't make a difference. It doesn't matter which way they answer it. I mean, maybe if it tells you a little bit about them as a person, if you answer that question.
And that's what it goes back to. A lot of voters are just doing an emotional vote right now.
Right. And that sucks. Do better, voters. I'm mad at you. All right, Virginia.
And thank you, Seth, for trying to get people to do better.
I just don't want to be sick anymore. I'm done with being sick. It's only been like 12 hours and I'm already over it. Well, I'm going to run some outro.
Well, I want you to go. I'd like
really
to see somebody like you on that board if they had a citizen.
I mean, and in full disclosure, it's absolutely selfishness. It's it's publicity. It's a publicity stunt for this show.
Yeah. But the thing is, you'll actually insist on gathering information and providing that information to the public.
That would be that would be the thing. And make sure make me understand it. That's all that I mean, because I'm not going to because like especially with this particular one, that big mess that was going on at the same time in Nashville, with that city council and mayor having a little bit of an email conversation that the conversation was about how do we keep this secret, and and so that all happened over the weekend, last weekend, and I had Kyle and Courtney in here, back to back, and I was talking to them about it, and it's like, when you guys go to this commission meeting, I want to see data, find out what the data is. And so I followed up with them both last Tuesday. I was like, did they show any data? It's like, no, I've requested it, but I haven't gotten any specific data yet. Because again, I have issues with UT kind of flexing their power onto the city and county because they want to, because it's clear to me that UT really doesn't like what's going on campus right now as far as the nightlife goes. And it's like, well, that's fine, UT, you can not like that, but my bar restaurant way over here on the other side of town has to follow the rules that the county puts in place.
So you need to follow them.
Right. So you can, right. And so you're putting my friend's bar over here out of business because they're actually following the rules, but the ones down there aren't. But you can't you can't make a law or you can't put one of these regulations in place that affects a particular place other than others. So I get it. But all right, Virginia, go back to real work. I'm gonna go drug up and take a nap and see if I feel better for the thing later today.
Well, get better, and thank you so much.
I will try my best. Virginia Couch, everybody, stopping in. She is running against Eddie Manis in District 18. I meant to ask you, early voting starts next week?
October 14th.
So 2 weeks. So
week after next. Yep.
While all you guys run out of town to go on vacation for fall break for the kids, you're missing the opening week for early voting. But get in there, vote early, or go vote on the 3rd, and we'll do a recap show on November 4th, because November 4th is the best day ever. It's my birthday. But we got more interviews coming up. I'm gonna get Eddie in here again, obviously. I'm gonna try to follow up with Kyle Ward and Courtney, and I'll let you guys know how this whole debacle of me trying to be on the Board of Health goes. So we're almost agreement at gmail.com. Check us out on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. I'll put some links to some of Courtney's different stuff in the show notes. I had it pulled up a second ago. Vote Virginia Couch. I said Courtney, I apologize. VoteVirginiaCouch.com. That's her main website, but I'll put a link to that, and I'll put a link to her Facebook page and some other stuff in there. Virginia, thank you very much. Have a great afternoon. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.